If marriages were 5 to 10 year contracts with options to renew if both parties accept, how would the world be different? It's a new nightmare. An entire industry rises up to create even more traditions for renewal celebrations. And now you have to attend ever more elaborate parties. Destination renewals. And even the more subdued homespun renewals require at least buying a nice bottle of scotch. I probably couldn't afford to keep up with more than 2 friends at the rate of this particular scenario. That's all entirely in my head. Happily married people would have to wait in a long annoying ass line every 10 years and it will put everyone in a bad mood. Marriage re-up officers will be rude and condescending because of all the dumbass general public they have to deal with every day. So basically a DMV but worse. Indiana fixed the DMV problem. They weren't all that bad when I moved away. Here in Norway, I can do most things online. I don't see how this is really any different. Each person go online and verify. We have a secure thingy to do this stuff. You can also simply have folks print off a paper and mail it in. My parents used 7-year contracts they would rewrite and renew. Each one was a plan on what they would do for the next 7 years. 8 kids and 54 years together. It worked well for them. Renewal ceremonies were basically family reunions. So no elaborate parties. People always think we're crazy, but my significant other and I do 5-year contracts. At the end of the 5 years, we evaluate our life together and decide what we want to do better, achieve together and separately, etc. In the next 5, we include a player option for another year. He works in sports lol, so I guess it's really a 6-year deal. People would likely wait until it's free to divorce and keeping their relationship intact longer for it to heal. On the other hand, marriages that are going through a rough patch during the renewal period would be more likely to break up. Right around the 5-year mark, my husband and I went through a difficult time in our marriage. We went to couples therapy and overcame our difficulties. But if letting the marriage contract lapse had been an option, that is probably what would have happened. This would change very little. Not renewing a marriage after 10 years when you have a bunch of joint property and kids is not any different from a no-fault divorce. Would be equally messy. And if you don't have any joint property or kids, a regular divorce would be pretty painless anyway. Essentially, with no-fault divorce laws, any marriage can already be treated as renewable contract. Same as phones. I'm pretty happy with the one I have now. And even though new ones are thinner and better looking, I just can't justify the expense of switching. Plus I'm locked into this stupid family plan. Although step-sibling porn will start to become more realistic. Hey, stepbro. They haven't yet renewed their marriage and I don't know how that affects anything, but this is a porn plot, so let's have sex now. More people wouldn't join their lives the way they do in a regular marriage. Everything would be about mine and theirs. I mean, honestly, in our marriage dividing up our lives sounds terrible. Who gets the awesome couch we picked out together? The cats who we raised? The beautiful plate we picked out together in Europe? Nobody knows. And hopefully nobody will ever know. I would add a twist where the children every 10 years will be forced to participate in some type of Hunger Games or Battle Royale to determine if they're fit to continue as members of the family. Less stability. More cheating if people are already with one foot out the door. More child psychological issues. And a whole lot of asset problems. People would also be much less willing to buy a house or have kids together if divorce was the default choice. Your spouse could swear up and down that they'll sign the renewal document. But how can you be sure? There would be less marriages. If you're going into it, think this is a 5-year deal. Why even bother? Sorry kids, I would love to have you at the house, but your mom got you in the contract. Suunu. See ya, but not if I see you first. Haha. It may make it easier for abuse victims to get out of abusive marriages. Sometimes the process of a divorce is a big factor in why some people stay. While a nice concept in principle, I suspect most people would find themselves hedging as the terms approached. So it would result in less marital stability and higher divorce rates. Right. Imagine telling your spouse 6 months in advance that you don't want to renew. It's as bad as knowing the lease on your college apartment needs to be resigned 3 months in advance but you want to drop your boyfriend/girlfriend who is also on the lease. Marriage is like agriculture but for mating. It saves the time that would have been spent on looking for a mate and lets us focus on other things. 5-10 years is too short of a span. It would probably mean less couples having kids and in general an increase in anxiety levels. No one is saying it would have to end lol. I don't know. But what I do know is the renewal would cost money. Nothing changes in any place you can divorce at 5 or 10 years. You would have the same entanglements either way. I guess it would be diff if it was the Middle East. Makes the whole ideal of marriage less meaningful. Happier. Easier to change your life later on if you end up being unhappy in a relationship like that. I wouldn't have wasted a decade of my life trying to fix the unfixable. Could have gotten out and been far happier. Sooner. People would want to buy out their contracts early. The median duration of a marriage in America is 8 years. I might have to see a source on that one, chief. Spousal accountability might go through the roof. That's what the FCKI was thinking and you're the first to say it. Good shit. Even more women would be raising kids on their own after the father split. Women would stop wanting to have children. My parents would still be together. No matter how miserable they are together. They keep saying it's because of me and it breaks me. I want my dad to break free. Edit. Spelling and typos and stuff. It's not you. It's them. That's awful. It might actually make people happier. If you both wanted to stay married then the faith and trust you have is reaffirmed. Some people might split who otherwise would not without the push this gives. So instead of staying together in misery they'd just move on. Petitions will be signed to reduce the number of years. What's the point of getting married then? The whole point is that you're saying this is your lifelong partner. And though some don't work out I feel like this would miss the point of marriage completely. Plus it would make things more difficult. I can't imagine having to deal with more paperwork and documents. What everyone is missing is that this would reduce a lot of early divorces. Lots of people would just wait it out. You might see more people willing to get married earlier though. Or don't get married in the first place. That kind of defeats the purpose of the question. Unless you prohibited divorce. Literally exactly the same as it is now. Supposedly marriage is for life. Does anyone treat it that way? The 50% who don't divorce do. Like the Ferengi. Pregnancy would be considered a rental. And as long as your name isn't Rome while getting into that marriage contract. Taken for all he had, poor guy. A lot less divorce and probably more cheating if you know it's not permanent. It wouldn't mean as much. But it would also make breakups easier without splitting up as many assets. Defeats the whole purpose of a marriage. Marriages are a sacred ceremony bonding two for life. If you want to do that then buy a promise ring. This would be a more impactful statement if divorce rates weren't so high. Jays. Probably outlawed by most strands of Christianity and other religions. And super unlikely that it would ever exist as technically. Marriage is a vow before the government. But me? A wedding photographer? Yeehaw $$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$$ $. Why get married then? I feel like this would undermine marriage. Yeah. What's the point? Either spouse could just back out when the contract is over. It could become a business. These contracts have to come from somewhere. Right? I'd rather spend time looking for a woman who I like the personality of and who loves my personality back. The external things degrade over time and therefore mean nothing in the long run. I'd rather not have to pay for a contract every 5-10 years. Also, domestic violence would be easier as both parties are under a contract. A book called The Memory of Earth by Orson Scott covers this concept in their society. That's about as much as I know from the book though. I thought it was really bad and couldn't get more than a few chapters in. It wouldn't be marriage then. It would likely mean every marriage contract would be paired with a prenuptial agreement, so there would be considerably less litigation over marital property. Small win perhaps, but still a win. Depends on if that means no one can leave the marriage divorce before the contract is up for renewal. If someone signs the contract and needs to get out of the marriage before the renewal, are they screwed? Or I might actually consider marriage. Sorry, only next of kin allowed. But I'm her husband and she's dying alone. You were her husband. Your marriage expired yesterday and she's incapable of renewing it. Legally you're now just some guy off the street. Marriage wouldn't exist. Think about the effect it'd have on children. Most marriages these days seem to be 5 to 10 year contracts anyway. I think you'd have a whole bunch of anxious people worried their spouse will leave them around the 5 or 10 year mark. I picture a lot of people splitting up to test the waters only to go back to old arrangements. And chaos regarding custody of kids, or even pets. There would be a lot more dead people. Especially women. It won't be good for kids. World will fall in family destruction. We would have a lot more divorces due to people not wanting to stay together or just plain forgetting. Then there are the ones who don't forget. They would celebrate each time they renewed. Just more paperwork. I wouldn't be married for 26 years. Love her, but if given the option, I would rethink things. So would it have been a good thing or a bad thing? I think that would be a lot better for this world. The way it is now. You have the potential to end up in a dead marriage like the one my parents have. My mom wants a divorce but my dad doesn't. So my mom is miserable and feels trapped. Probably ending up making millions of marriages last longer. I've decided to take my talents to South Beach. Far fewer men would have alimony payments and destroyed assets retirement. Every nice guy would write a fake contract to marry the women he heal the door for. A lot more kids grow up with divorced parents. I mean, would it be different? You can leave a marriage anytime. Women would file for divorce 4/9 years into marriage and get that sweet $sign. I would have saved a lot of money on my divorce. And my divorce lawyer would be the one who's poor. It worked for my great-grandparents. Every year on their anniversary they'd sit down and discuss their relationship and if they wanted to stay together for the following year and made contracts over it. They weren't legally binding. But something they took at each other's word. Girls teen to 20s would fetch higher value. And women over 30 would fetch very little value. It'd be weird. The implicit deal today/30 years ago is that guy trades big chunk of lifetime earnings stability status for the sex of a beautiful young woman. And the childbearing of a old young to middle-aged woman. I think slightly different couplings would become more common. Teenage to 20-something men would be very low value. Because women would just aim for already established 30-something to 50-something men. Most people would grow up to have serious abandonment issues due to being the children of multiple divorces. I can't wait not to renew after every argument. Before Catholicism ruined Ireland we had the Brehon laws. Women had equal rights and status with men. Either side could initiate a marriage. And it was a contract for 3 years. At the end of that time you simply stood in the village square and said that you were no longer married if it wasn't working out. This is how vampire marriages work in the Cirque du Freak series. Which I loved. So as an authority on the concept I can confidently say that if it were changed to contracts with term limits then one party would die in battle before the renewal was up. Yup. If you didn't have to renew. I think plenty would be out of there at 5 years and most likely many of the rest would give up at 10 years. My husband and I actually do this on our anniversary. We have a meeting and review the course of the year. Reminisce on things that were great. Talk about things to improve. And make a concerted agreement to continue. Keeps things fresh. Close bracket. I fail to see how it'd be much different. It's not like you're trapped in marriage currently. The same entropy that keeps people together in marriage would keep them cruising through auto-renews. Not that much really. If you added that neither of the partners can have sex with another person, that's where fun would begin. Could work provided it had ironclad enforceable in court provisions about cheating, non-renewal of contract, and no alimony or asset seizure in the event of non-renewal of contract. Child support payments would have to go into a fund for the kid, to not be used or spent by anyone but the child, and only when the child turns 18. Like toxic couples now who refuse to break up to prove they're gonna make it despite what their families and friends think. I feel like they'd eventually stay together because if not then everyone they know is gonna have the power of I told you so. Sad reality for a lot of toxic couples I know. Capital I. More women would retain their jobs and not become homemakers, as this puts them in terrible risk after the 7 years. So this probably would force more people to think through their future realistically and plan for contingencies. What if it was more like NHL contracts? Restricted free agent after 3 years. Arbitration every year until year 7. Then you become an unrestricted free agent. Or you resign for max years to lock in. It would be a great idea. People assume how they feel right now is how they're going to feel in the distant future, but that's rarely the case. Nothing. My ex would still try to ride it out while f***ing other dudes while promising to be at her parents' place helping her mom watch over her severely autistic brother. I feel like a lot less children would suffer from hostile parents. Divorce can be harsh for kids. But if the process of divorce technically doesn't exist and the parents can just go their separate ways after the time period, then that's a lot less arguments kids have to be put in the middle of. It would probably force people to stop being lazy and put some effort into their relationships. Especially if they are getting close to that 5 years period. Might not be a bad thing. Constant effort. Maybe all the people who made idiotic comments about this stupid question should refrain from marriage altogether, as they clearly do not understand what a healthy marriage entails.